And good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday once again. It's our Lunch and Learn series for the Leadership Academy. Today's topic is going to be around driver metrics versus outcome metrics. And just as a point of clarification, because a good question was asked earlier, yes, you are encouraged to take your lunch during this period of time. There's 20 or 30 minutes of learning while you are taking a break. Those are two things you probably can do. Right? We can barely chew our gum and walk at the same time, so you can certainly, accomplish that, and your brain can handle that complexity. So the reason why I brought up today as a topic, driver versus outcome metrics, is that you are right in the midst of developing your box 1, 2, and 3, your problem statement, and you will soon be going to your gap analysis and your solution approach. In between that is box number 3 and box number 8. Box number 3 is about the target state. And of course, box 8 is the measuring tool over a period of time, daily, weekly, monthly, and report back from 30, 60, 90 days to make sure that whatever you end up doing and fixing, that you have it sustained and it becomes a new normal. The difficulty is always in selecting the meaningful metric, the right metric, for your particular project. So I have a simple but very powerful example on what the difference is between a driver metric and outcome metric, and how you can impact your driving metrics in order to influence or change the outcome itself. So therefore, the title "Fly Baby Fly" kind of gives it away that I asked everybody to have 3 sheets of paper available to you, and even if you want to prepare for it, you can start, as you listen. Maybe that's triple tasking. Maybe that's not possible. Is making paper planes, making 3 of the exact same paper planes, so as a part of the process of learning the difference. So I want to start here by first asking, or really kind of restating something that I've come to several times in the past. It's about your culture, and that can be your personal brand, that can be your department, that can be the hospital, that can be the organization that you work for. It doesn't really make a difference. We all have current results in hand. Right? These are outcomes. These are things that already have happened. And now we know how well we did. Now, we know that in organizations, we tend to talk a lot about outcomes, but not so much about how did we get to that outcome. To take a little deeper dive into that, it is really, really important to understand how we deliver results. And I will take it down to the individual level, but this is very much on a group level, on a hospital-wide or system-wide level as well. We get results based on our deep personal experiences that we have gained over our formative years. Now, even in our academy, but certainly in the hospitals that we work in, people come from all corners of the world. And in that process, people have gained experiences that makes us very different from each other, which also makes us stronger, right? So you don't want to give up on those experiences, deep cultural, experiences, because they all add value at the end of the day, right? Diversity and inclusion is a good thing, not a bad thing. But out of those experiences, we all develop beliefs. Now, I believe that beliefs change over time as we get exposed to new information and new observations as we go through our adolescence, into our teenage years, into our early, tweens, go from single to being, in a relationship to being married or whatever else you end up doing. Every step of the way, as time progresses, we can start, gaining new beliefs. But out of the experiences and out of those beliefs, we take actions. It is the action that is going to deliver the result. It's not the result, it's really the actions that we take based on our experience and our beliefs that is going to give us results. It holds true for your projects or for anything that you do, right? Every single thing that drives an outcome you are taking an action, or somebody is taking an action. So the real question that we have to ask ourselves, that when we are going to improve something as leaders, we are tasked with 4 things. We do, we improve, we look for opportunity, and we need to look into the future. We are in a continuous improvement cycle, an operational excellence. We try to get better every single day, just by a little bit. When we see that the things that we're doing every single day is not giving us a different result, right? Coming back and doing the same thing over and over and over is, what Einstein said, or likely had said, that is the definition of insanity. So it's the choice that we make at that point in time that we have to alter our actions in order to get new results. Now, when you change an action, the result is not always better, right? So again, the thought process here as you go through your project, when you start taking a different action and you have a solution approach, is to do it in a controlled environment. As you start affecting the axis, right, the variables, you want to carefully measure the outcome. And you want to look for downstream effects of it. So that's really kind of like here expressed in the pyramids in front of you. And it holds true in just about every single thing, every facet of life. So this is a short equation that I've advised some of you, make a post-it and put it on your desk, put it on your screen, something that you look to and refer to on a regular basis. Y is an outcome metric. So it's the function of the axis or the function of the variables that's going to give you an outcome. So if you want to change the outcome, you have to work and start manipulating the axis in a controlled environment. As I referred to when I did the introduction of problem solving, right? A3 thinking, I went over very quickly what the Six Sigma model is. Right? Six Sigma is process variation control to the point that you only have 3.4 defects per million opportunities. Now, is that truly good enough? Well, if I'm flying an airplane, that's not good enough. 0 is good enough. I cannot tolerate 3.4 airplanes with 200 people each falling out of the sky for every million flights. And for that matter, medication administration and errors as well, right? So we need to adopt a 0 defect environment. But the Six Sigma model holds a lot of truth here. That if you want to define the axes and you want to manipulate them to deliver new results, you have to go to a definition phase first. You have to define to the finest point what your problem is. Then you want to very carefully measure what it is. Then you want to analyze what you have found. Right? Then you want to go to the improvement or the PDCA cycle. How can I come up with new solutions? But very specific to the axis. And Six Sigma takes it one step further to a statistical, level, right? So one standard deviation. And then you need to make sure that once you have identified the right axis to manipulate that give you your desired results, you have to now very carefully control this. Although our A3 thinking is not going to that depth, but it still holds true that whatever you do in the process, we have to define the problem, we have to understand the current state, we have to complete the gap analysis, we have to come up with a solution approach, we want to test drive that, and then we want to put it in place and measure it for an extended period of time in order to control the outcomes to make sure that we are continuously improving. Or if we plateau, we might have to start back over again and see why we're plateauing, how the measurement, the improvement, so on and so forth. It becomes a cycle, the PDCA cycle continues. So let's take an example. If I look at a scale, is it an X or a Y?
That's the Y.
Exactly right. And that's 126.4 kilograms. That's probably about my weight too. Anyhow, not to reveal too much, but so the thing is, I can come back to that scale every single morning and look at that number, and all it will ever tell me is now. Right, so in order to control that number up or down, the only way to affect this is knowing what goes into my mouth. Right? There's a Dutch saying, and this will be on your test at the end of the program. Just kidding. Elk pontje gaat door het mondje. It literally translates into English that every pound goes through the mouth. If you want to affect this, you need to check out what you put into that. Albeit water or high protein, calorie, fibers, whatever maybe it can be breaking. Each one of those is an independent X. So it's a good way to remember for yourself on what a Y and what an X is. So the process variation control here is about measuring the outcome of an extended period of time by setting upper and lower control limits. Now, again, I'm not going to ask for that in this particular project, but I want you to think about that. I've talked about whenever we learn new things over a short period of time, we are going to drop the amount of learning very quickly. This holds true for the class that I'm teaching here, or if you go to a webinar, you go to a TED Talk, you read a book. It all is the same. You learn a lot in a short period of time, but most of it is forgotten. That's part of the reason why I'm a stickler to making sure that we have our one-to-ones, because that's the time that we can reinforce it. But even more importantly, you are measuring your performance on your scorecards. By keeping it very visual, red, yellow, and green, you're essentially speaking starting to develop a graph of an upper and lower control limit. We want to make sure that we're not in the red, and we want to make sure that we continuously working through the green. Now, the variation could be the yellow, where you can make ranges of performance. If your opportunity is to do public speaking or having conversations with people who are not in your department, you can gauge that every single day how well you did. Some days you did great, some days you didn't. Sometimes you did more than you need to, you overproduced, and that's, not that there's any harm, but that was not necessary either, right? So learning how to measure things over time in a visual environment is very powerful in reinforcing what it is that we want to do and where we want to go. So here is, and in the next question, you're looking at different labels. Is this an Y or is this an X?
X.
You had a 50-50 shot. Excellent, right? We covered the Y. Correct, right? Here, if you want to influence what the outcome is going to be, we have to look at the individual X's that are going to drive an outcome itself, right? So think about that for your own projects. As you starting to come up with a target statement, it is not just good enough to look at an outcome. You have to start identifying what are the drivers. Now, even though your target statement, your outcome statement can be done as part of your box 1, 2, and 3, your drivers should not be definable until after you do the gap analysis, after you go through the solution approach, if we then we, and you start making a commitment to doing pilots. Right? At that time, you want to look at some variables. Each item you come up with in your solution is an X, is a driver to the outcome itself. So what kind of metrics are we looking on the board over here? Suppressed gaining report is the patient satisfaction results. Are these X's or Y's?
Those are the results.
So those are all outcomes, right? These are all. So we have a tendency to go to meetings, hour-long meetings every month to talk about patient satisfaction. And we go into these reports, or we get them into the, and we are looking at all of these and say, I'm trending up or trending down. We look at outcomes. Listen, we can look at outcomes all day long, but nothing is ever going to change. Right? Really what we should do is share the outcomes prior to the meeting and have discussions in the meetings about the drivers and how we can make changes that gets us closer to our targets. Right, so we have to be very mindful that outcomes are fine, but we need to talk about the drivers. The other word of caution around looking at drivers and outcome metrics is the frequency that we look at that. If we only look at Press-Ganey scores once a month or once per quarter, but we don't look at the drivers, what it is what are we doing on a day-to-day basis to improve outcomes, we are shortchanging ourselves, because by the time you get to the report out, right, the outcome, days, weeks, months have gone by without manipulating the axis. So therefore, again, it goes back to the point that I'm trying to make, is that your daily management of your own behaviors, your own action plans that you have in place for your IDPs, or for some of the drivers to improve the, love those you lead, or motivate with fears resolve, or having difficult conversations, all those things are axis to Ys. If you do them consistently, if you measure performance will improve. So let's put this to task. All right, let's have some fun with this. I would like all of you to take a minute, right, you can make this airplane or any airplane. Fold an airplane quick, and I'll give you, until a minute to do it, 60 seconds to do it. Sorry. Let me see on the screen when you have your airplane done. What you're doing now, as you're building it, you're putting together axes, right? You're folding the paper, you're folding wings, you are putting pressure on the creases, you're putting in design features. Show me the paper plane when you have it on the screen when you have it complete. Thank you, Bobby. And I see Meredith. I see Christine. Juan, you got yours ready? Oh, it's production time over here, my friend. Throughput time.
I haven't done one of these in a while.
Well, that's okay. And that makes my point even more apparent.
This reminds me of the episode on The Office where they had the paper plane contest. Did anybody see that?
Yeah, well, so that would have been a cheaper version of giving you a clip to get the point across. But I always find it to be easier and better when you do it yourself. All right, well, you haven't, Lisa, you have your plane?
I have absolutely no idea what I've made or which.
That's perfect. It's perfectly fine. All right, I want you to stand up, or from your seated position, I want you to throw your plane. Just nice, easy cast.
Mine went down.
All right. So everybody has thrown their airplane. Now everybody has a result. There's an outcome from building your airplane and throwing it. Do you think that your plane had a perfect flight, met max potential? Are you happy with the results? Or you think there's room for improvement?
Mine landed at my feet, which is where I intended for it to go.
Okay, I should have been clear. Let's have an airplane that flies the furthest and longest. That would have been
tall, and therefore very far.
That would have been a desired result. So I want you to do the exact same thing again. Now, whose plane flew the furthest? Tell me approximately how many feet it flew, Elisa.
Down.
One.
Oh. Well, mine hit the wall, so my office is kind of small.
Yeah, it went to the wall 5 feet away.
Okay,
Mine
and Meredith? And Bobby, just
Mine
to tell
landed
me
on a
how many
hospital bed, probably about 6 feet away.
Okay, and
Mine landed on the windowsill.
okay, very good. So we have somewhere between 3 and 6 feet that we have everybody flew. So I want you to think about it. You made a plane. You could look on the screen on how that person made the plane. I want you to make it again with the mindset that you wanted to fly even further than you did the last time. And I'll give you another 60 seconds to build the plane. The time constraints over here. It's like Tesla. They have to put out a new car every 23.5 seconds to keep up with demand. I wish I had that problem. Huh?
Oh, this is awful.
As you build it, I will look at the a couple of the X's that we're talking about.
Can you go back to how to fold the plane? I haven't done it.
Sure, no problem. So I'll talk about so there are forces involved, right? There are X's involved in your outcome. So the design of your airplane, right? It is how fast the thrust of the plane. It is the lift component, in other words, the wing to thrust and ratio, how much air can pass over and under the wing that provides lift itself, and how much resistance, right? How much drag there is on the plane. And then, of course, the mass, the weight of the plane itself. These are all just some common X's. Show me your plane again if you have it completed. All right, I see 1, 2, 3. I see Bobby is looking outside to find her plane. And Juan, you're almost there? Now, just real quickly, you can all speak at the same time. You can take yourself off mute for a minute. Did you make any changes to your plane since the last time you flew it?
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
So everybody made a change. Do you think you made a change, one change or many changes?
I made one change.
Many.
And what is the predictable, what is your outcome prediction of this next flight?
It will go 1 foot further.
Okay. And did you make the change based on your experience from the first flight?
No.
Yeah.
You said no, Elisa?
Correct.
Okay, you made a completely independent decision to, did you change the design of your aircraft too?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that you came up with a whole different design. So everything was changed.
It's now flat.
Okay, very good. So I would like you to, again, turn around and throw the plane, right? Use the same amount of thrust, so to speak, and see what the results are this time.
Now my associates are seeing me throw paper airplanes when I say
That's okay. There's a lot of leadership skills over here.
It landed on it went up and went on its back and fell down.
Okay, very good. Who else? Tell me about your flight.
Mine actually went further than the first one.
Further than how far, Claudian?
Maybe about 2 feet more.
Okay, and so how much is that now? 7 or 8 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Juan, how did yours do?
Well,
how did it go?
I did worse.
Worse. All right, so Claudian is better. Meredith, how did yours do?
Mine is better too. It actually went the same, about a foot or two further, but it hit the wall. So.
Okay, and Bobby?
Mine dive bombed.
Dive bombed. Okay, so we have two that performed better. So now you see what you did. You changed the axis, right? You did a variation to the flight path itself, to the vehicle itself. Some were slightly improved, others much improved, others got worse, right? That is no different than when you start experimenting with things. Sometimes you have the direct opposite effect. Sometimes you have a downstream effect. Now the question is, if I'm going to ask you to do it again, one more time, what would you change this time? Well, and you don't need to build a plane again, but what is one thing that you would want to change? What is one thing that you want to do?
Maybe you could change your position or the way that you're throwing it.
Okay, what else?
Make it smaller, then it might go further.
Okay, what else?
Maybe the weight of the paper.
Okay, what else? So think about this for a second in our everyday life, right? We're all working on the same project. We're all working now, at this point in time, you're all working in a compatible situation where you're working independent from each other in a silo. Now we're all in it together, I would say, right? So don't you think that after 2 flights or 2 designs, if you have 2 people out of the 5 who have had 2 successful flights, and each of their flights went further than the first one, do you think it is time for those people who had the 2 successful flights, Meredith and Claudia, or the other 3 on the phone, to reach out to Meredith and Claudia and ask, how did you build yours? How can we replicate that best practice? And that is really the message, right? Is that we have to make sure that we have this integrated partnership. When you see somebody doing it better, then we should adopt that standard. Right? We want to look for best practices in the industry. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So we can find that perfect little aircraft that somebody has built that flies a long ways and adopt that standard. The next thing, of course, as a leader is to both replicate that and then try to make it even better and then share it back. So the key thing is that we have to understand, in order to drive new outcomes, we have to look at the axis, the variables that go into the outcomes itself, that is driving the outcome. Look for best practices so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you can certainly adopt those, try them out in a trial, and then be able to share that back if you have made improvements to it. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
So after this call, I expect everybody to call either Claudia or Meredith and do a copycat of their airplane and see how you continue. No, I'm just kidding with you. But that's really the point, right? Is to really make sure that we work as one and not just as singles. Right? And that's where the demonstration of the integrated relationship or the synergistic relationship, it becomes a very important part. Our willingness to share, our willingness to be one. So with that said, I'll tell everybody have a wonderful week. I know that some of you had very stressful long weeks. So make sure that as you enter the weekend, you check out of your email by the end of the day, right? Sort that, shine it. Make sure that you have only actionable items left in the box. Maybe even take 5 minutes to prioritize your work for next week. You can take that off your mind so you can truly go into the weekend and trying to rebalance your mental wellness, your physical wellness, your spiritual wellness, and your relationship wellness. You can come back recharged in your next shift at work. Have a great weekend and enjoy. If you need me for anything, you know where to find me. Although I'm traveling to upstate, I'm certainly can make myself available. Take care. Of any other questions from anybody? And I'll stop the recording.
Walter, I signed up for tomorrow.